Mr. Parkhurst, are you there?
I am, Your
Okay,
Honor.
and I see Miss Safakos is there and Miss Parkhurst is there. Okay, this is Mr. Parkhurst's emergency motion. I have read the contentions, Mr. Parkhurst, so we don't have to go back through that extensively, but I just want to say to everybody here, we're not here to relitigate what we talked about. This is what should I consider on an emergency basis? Here's the legal standard for everybody. Is there a material change of circumstances that warrants me making a different custodial determination? Material change of circumstances is the legal standard. Okay. Procedurally, I just want to make sure, Mr. Parkhurst, you understand what I just said, and Ms. Safakos also has the same understanding.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, it is your motion, Mr. Parkhurst. You may make a quick opening statement, please.
Your Honor, the information presented in the emergency complaint, I guess, however you want to call it, I'm just at wit's end because there have been multiple emergency motions filed, and DeKalb County has always been very, very quick to respond and to conduct emergency motions when the counterparty has done it. For me, it went on for a month, beyond a month, and I don't believe that I'm getting anything but a double standard here. Okay, so that's the first piece of information. The second piece is I'm going to review with you the answer to my petition that both the counterparty and her attorney responded with, and I'm assuming that this is both Ms. Parkhurst and Ms. Savakos' language.
Well, you don't need to review their answer.
Okay, well,
they've
perjured themselves multiple
okay,
times.
but Mr. Parkhurst,
okay? So
it's
I
your petition. It's your
want to walk
petition.
through this. Okay,
Look, listen to what I'm saying, because I think the problem you're having is it's very easy for self-represented people in particular, with all due respect, to say that they feel there's a double standard or they're not receiving something that they requested. But you have to understand, when you file an emergency petition, you have to make specific allegations supported by evidence that there's some allegation of harm to the children. Your petition simply said that she was committed to a behavioral health facility. It didn't allege anything about the children being in harm's way. In fact, to the contrary, the response from her counsel on her behalf was that the children were safe, and it set forth why they were safe. That, sir, is why a presiding judge did not deem what you said at the time to be an emergency warranting a hearing right then. When we say emergency hearings, people use that word in a lot of ways. What we mean is, are these children in danger right now? And you have to say that, and you have to say why, or else a presiding judge is not going to hear the matter. Because what we are talking about, quite frankly, Mr. Parkhurst, is people who are actively waiting a blood transfusion or they're going to die, children who are in threat of being kidnapped or raped, or it literally does. That's an emergency requiring a hearing that day. And the presiding judge in any county is presiding over matters for everybody, not just their division. So what happens is in reading your petition just on its face, it didn't rise to an emergency that warranted. It might have been urgent. It wasn't emergent, if you can understand that, based on what you put in the filed petition. So I want to be really careful, because I've noticed that you tend to say things that are just not legally accurate. And I want to keep you on track. You are actually here today, sir, because you filed an emergency action, which basically is treated as a temporary, like what happened that's adversely impacting these children that needs to be heard even today. Okay. That's why we're here. So we should spend that time wisely and do that right now today.
So I'm going to walk you through a very important timeline of events how they happened.
Does this relate to what you contend as to why
This
we're here
this,
today?
this does absolutely relate. So
Okay.
so Miss Parkhurst was committed into Peachford, as you're aware, on April 8th, 2023, correct? As far as I know. Is she
Yep.
able to even respond
No,
and say,
no, sir. No, this is
okay,
your motion.
okay. So as far
She's
as I
not on
know,
scene.
my here's what I know. Here's the information that I know. And it might be a little bit scattershot because Miss Parkhurst was not providing me any information about the care or safety plan for the children at the time. And this was, keep in mind, before your ruling got delivered to anyone on the prior case. So you have to keep in mind that at the time we had not, there was no sole or any any custody situation. She had custody, I had custody. She was sent to an emergency room. She got committed, and I don't know all the information as to why, when, or how, to Peachford on allegedly April 28th, 2023. It might have been April 27th, 2023. I received, prior to that, a week prior, there were multiple phone calls that came in from various numbers from my children. Her phone number was 678-896-2377. It started to change. Carter and Madison, my children, started telling me that her number had changed, her phone had been hacked, a bunch of other information. We communicate very closely and I think well on Our Family Wizard, and this was never broadcasted to me, as far as I know, that any of this was going on. So Melody changed her phone number 3 or 4 different times, thinking that she was hacked, thinking that the federal government was after her, thinking whatever. On April 28th, I believe it was, the people who were at that point allegedly in charge of the children, which was Hannah Fleming, which took Melody to the emergency room, and her sister Morgan Fleming contacted me, and they told me the following.
Your Honor, I would object to any line of hearsay.
Okay, I'm giving my testimony.
But you can't talk about what someone else told you. They would
Okay,
have.
I'm going to tell you what I heard.
You can't.
Okay?
You can't.
Okay.
You can't talk about if Hannah Fleming or her sister Morgan Fleming said anything, they'd have to be here to testify.
Well, then I need to get a hearing to subpoena them.
That's what this is.
No, I need to get, this is an emergency hearing. I need to get a real hearing to subpoena them because they would not show up at this emergency hearing.
Well, that's not how you manage that, sir. This is today is the day for what you've alleged.
Okay, so I get a phone call and I am told that the children's mother, who is in custody of the children, is in Peachford Behavioral Health Institution. Okay. I try to get information about that. I get very limited information from those people who told me this, who told me that Melody did not want me to tell me any information about what was going on. She's sitting here right now, so she can testify to this.
Well, but she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to testify. So until she does, you can't talk about.
Well, how do I get her to testify?
I can't tell you that. It's your motion.
I'd like to call her as a witness then right now.
Okay, Ms. Parkhurst, please unmute your device. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you would give in connection with this matter will be the truth under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
All right, lower your hand and please state your name.
Melody Parkhurst.
Okay, yes, Ms. Parkhurst. Mr. Parkhurst has called you as a witness. Ms. Parkhurst, go ahead.
So, Ms. Parkhurst, when were you, can you please describe to me the events leading up to your visit to the emergency room on I believe it was the 28th. It may have been the 27th of April, 2023.
Sure. So I had been in an intense amount of stress. As you know, we had wrapped up an intense custody hearing. I was buying a house, trying to buy a house that fell through. I was trying to sell my house, and then my email was indeed hacked. And I started getting phone calls asking me about the health insurance quote that I had put in around the clock and texts. And when I looked in my email, I could see that there were really personal loan documents that had been put into the trash can. And so I was very concerned about that. I also had not had a parenting break for nearly 2 years and had been through quite a bit of abuse, quite a bit of threats, quite a bit of being berated and told that I was going to go to jail and that I was going to have to speak to a judge. And it really just came to a point where I knew that I needed to get mental health help. And I tried to get an appointment on ZocDoc with a psychiatrist. I called my primary care provider. The ZocDoc was backed up for 2 weeks. And I knew that with the intensity of how I was feeling, that the right thing to do was to get the children in safe hands and to go and seek mental health care. And I did that willingly and voluntarily. And from the emergency room, directed Hannah to, in fact, reach out to you.
So you directed Hannah to give me information about your care, and you were not withholding any information from me.
I literally said to Hannah, let Cameron know that I am at the emergency room right now getting mental health care. Let Cameron know the children are okay. Everything is okay. And I knew that everything was going to be okay because as a single mom, I had always had plan A, B, C, and D in case there was an emergency with me. You live in Florida. And if I were to get hit by a car, I need to know that the children are okay. And that is a priority for me. So I already knew exactly what was going to happen for the kids. And, you know, I feel like I did the right thing. When I got to Peachford voluntarily, I called you. I called you myself from Peachford. And I told you the children were okay. The children were with Kinsey, who we both know and trust, that the children were not going to miss a beat. I told you that I needed to rest. I told you that I just wanted to get on medication so that I could stabilize and be able to be the mom that I'd always been before. You indicated to me at the time that you were, you know, wanting to talk to my doctors, wanting to talk to me at every turn. You indicated to me at that time that, you know, you would not ever use my seeking of mental health care against me and use the term, you can take that to the bank. And I really felt like I could not even relax in that moment where I was trying very hard to make sure the children were cared for and that I could just focus on my own mental health after what had been like an insanely intense period of my life.
Ms. Parkhurst, you said a couple of things I want to follow up, okay?
Okay.
The first was you were talking about your email being hacked. I know nothing about that, and I honestly that's an important point, but maybe irrelevant to this particular proceedings. But how many times did you change your cell phone number in the week of April, let's just say the second half of April of 2023? How many times?
Well, I was getting calls like around the clock on the number that I had, and I do work for the government. So I contacted our CSERT, our division that works on security, and told them what had happened. And I was advised, they looked at my login history, and I was advised just to turn the phone off. So I went and got a temporary phone because I didn't have a lot of money. As soon as I got paid, I got another iPhone so that I'd have an iPhone. And so the temporary number was one that you had on a little phone till I got paid. And then now I have a new number. I still hope to be able to restore my old number when, you know, when some time has died down, but I don't think anybody could handle, I don't know if you've ever been hacked, but like getting calls and texts about health insurance quotes that you've asked for around the clock, knowing that somebody has likely taken your social security number and you've had to lock your credit cards down is very disconcerting.
Ms. Parker, so I think we've all had to do that in the past. It's normal operating procedure. That's
Objection, Your
fine.
Honor, case
You can't
testifying.
testify, Mr. Parkhurst, at this time. You can only ask her
So
question.
you indicated something important here, and you discussed this, and I'd like you to expand upon this point that you made
Sure.
during testimony. When I talked to you when you were at Peachford, we had a very in-depth discussion. I wouldn't say in-depth, but a quick but pointed discussion. And I promised you that my goal was not to take the children away from you, which is never the goal at all. But you said you were suffering from bouts of paranoia, and you said that you were suffering from that you believe you had been hacked and that the federal government was going to take you to jail. Can you give me more information on that?
No, I don't recall saying that to you at all, but I do recall saying I had been hacked because, yes, I had been hacked. And I do recall telling you I had reported that to work because I look at my work email on the device that was hacked. So it was a concern to me because we're trained to be concerned about that. We're trained to be concerned that someone has compromised your work email and to report it in a timely manner. And I did tell you that I needed to rest. I did tell you that the fact that you had blown positive that same week had been incredibly stressful for me because we were still under this custody hearing and we'd not heard a verdict. And I was frankly just feeling exhausted and worried that you were not going to ever get sober and it was going to always fall to me to be completely the sole caregiver. And I asked you about that. I said, Cameron, if you really want to help the kids, just get sober. What are you talking about? You said to me. I don't know what you're talking about. And I pointed out the positive blow. And even right there in that medical facility where I'm trying to get rest, you were gaslighting me, telling me it never happened. Mr. Parkhurst.
Miss Parkhurst. You, in your answer to my petition, answer number 1, these are your words on behalf of your attorney. You said the defendant did so after experiencing anxiety, paranoia, and exhaustion due to her email being hacked and the plaintiff's constant threats of jail and contempt actions. Ms. Parkhurst, we only talk over our family wizard.
No. You can't testify yet. You'll have your time to do. They can only ask.
Can you provide me with any evidence over our family wizard, the only place that we communicate ever outside of the one conversation we had when you were at Peachford, any evidence at all about me giving you a threat of jail or contempt? Anything, please.
Mr. Parkhurst, I can give you my testimony. And over the course of our entire history post-divorce, it's been a constant thread of dialogue with you. So I have been threatened so many times.
Ms. Parkhurst, I want evidence.
Okay, you can't interrupt her. Mr. Parkhurst, I'm going to stop the testimony again if you don't follow the rules. You can't interrupt. You got to ask a question. You're both a litigant and the lawyer right now. Right now, you're a lawyer. Just ask the questions. Accept the answer. You'll get to testify.
So you have no proof at all about any of this, what you're saying?
Any of what? Hold on.
Any proof at all about me making threats of jail or contempt? Do you have any proof of that at all?
Mr. Parkhurst, I didn't bring all of the old text messages and all of the old history because today's hearing is supposed to be about how we're going to take care of our children. Were our children ever unsafe? Are our children safe now? Is there an emergency? So I did not bring all of those old text messages but I can testify wholeheartedly that I have been threatened. You're going to talk to a judge. I'm going to put you in jail. I'm going to hold you in contempt more times than I can even count over the course of the history of engaging with you. And unfortunately, I believe that it's kind of a modus operandi with you to make threats of others.
Ms. Parker's, but we do use our family wizard, correct?
We
And
have been using our family
for
wizard
how long?
for about a year.
And is there, no, it's not about a year. How long?
No, just go ahead. She said for a
How
year.
long have we used our family wizard? When did we
Okay,
start?
Objection asked and answered.
Mr. Parkhurst, you have to accept her answer. If you
Okay, over the past 2 years, as we have used our family wizard, has there ever been any threat to you whatsoever on our family wizard?
I'm certain there is if I look, because the threats are really like insidious, Mr. Parker's, like things like, oh, well, we'll just have to wait and see what the judge says about you. I mean, there are these little threads that have always left me feeling worried. I mean, the things that you say to me, I feel the majority of the time are not conducive to positive co-parenting with the children.
Ms. Parker, that's your opinion. That's fine. Okay,
Objection,
so
Your Honor.
on Friday, April 28th, I received 2 phone calls. One was from Hannah, who I believe was with you in the emergency room and possibly when you got checked into Peachford. Was she with you at both places?
No, she was not.
Was she with you at the emergency room?
Yes, she was. I directed her to contact you.
Okay. And I got a phone call from Morgan, her sister, who is, you can tell the court, but I would guess that she has had the closest contact over a long period of time with both you and the children. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by the closest contact. You mean of the 2 of them, or like of anyone?
Anybody. Like she was their main babysitter, caretaker, whatever you want to call that.
So Morgan was the caregiver when I needed extra help. So I didn't just have Morgan around the clock or 24 hours a day or even 5 days a week. You know, it was when I was like exhausted or had the flu or needed to rest that I would call Morgan for extra support.
But she also helped you around the house, outside of the house. She helped paint. She helped put up a basketball hoop that I bought for the children. She helped do a variety of things in addition to just typical babysitting type behavior.
I
responsibility.
mean, I paid her for those things.
Okay. And
but
she would drive the kids, and she had very close contact with you, and she was one of the, if not the closest person who communicated with you on a daily basis more than anybody else.
No, that's not accurate in terms of communicating with me on a daily basis. No, it is true that she cared for the children more than anyone else in LJ.
Okay.
Like, you know, but we have lots of other people that I talk to more often than Morgan.
Okay. So can you explain to the court and back up your answer to item number 1? Actually, it's not item number 1. It's part of item number 1 and below. Why would Morgan and Hannah both call me concerned that 2 things? 1, you did not want them to tell me what was going on. And 2, you did not want me to know anything about what was going on with your ER visit or your institutionalization at Peachford. They both were very concerned.
Okay, Mr. Parkhurst, I would directed them to call you myself from the emergency room. And to back that up, to absolutely ensure that you knew what was going on with your children, I called you myself. I called you myself from a
Ms.
little
Parker,
phone.
I want to
in my
interrupt you for a
phone.
second.
Objection, Your Honor. You're not allowing her to testify.
Yep, Mr. Parkhurst, you have to accept the answer. Miss, there wasn't an objection to the question because you can't ask a
I
witness.
have an
about somebody
objection on
else.
timeline. She
Listen,
was in an institution. She
you
doesn't know the
can't-
timeline. I do.
Well, that's the whole point. She can't answer as to why someone would say something to you.
Okay.
She can't put themselves, that's why they have to be here, but you didn't get an objection. So you got to accept the answer that you just got. You can't interrupt her. She
Okay.
disagrees with you. Her answer is she directed them to call you.
Okay.
Now, if you contend that they said something else, you got to call them here.
Ms. Parkhurst, I have called Hannah, Morgan, Lauren, Nita, your friend, Kinsey Lee. I've called them all, and obviously, due to allegiance with you, they've all said no.
Objection, Your Honor. There's no question.
You got to ask.
I want to know on Friday, April 28th, as I was making a very important decision whether I was going to drive from Florida to Georgia to maintain the continuity of my children's education and care, why both of these counterparties told me verbatim that they were not supposed to be contacting me, and you did not allow them to do that.
Mr. Parkhurst, I just explained to you, you can't ask her why they told you something. They're not here. That calls for speculation. She would have to speculate as to why. And she's already speculated that she doesn't agree with what you said. So that's why it's not a proper question.
Ms. Parkhurst, I talked to the children at 7:08 p.m. on the 28th, which is Friday. They were in the process of packing their bags for, they both said 2 weeks. I asked a variety of people what was going on at that time. I even asked the children.
Objection, Your Honor. He's testifying.
I'm not testifying. I'm asking a question.
Well, ask the question.
The children told me they were packing for 2 weeks.
Objection.
Who would they have heard?
Hold on. Let him set up the question, Ms. Safakos. What is your question? You want to know why they were packing for what? What's her understanding?
Who would have told them to pack for 2 weeks if all was well with you at an institution?
Cause for speculation.
Sustain. She can't answer that.
Why would the children pack for 2 weeks?
I did not tell the children anything about 2 weeks, and I feel like I can't speak to that. And I feel, what I can say, Mr. Parkhurst, is that when I called you myself from the facility and you indicated you were trying to make a decision about coming to Georgia, I indicated to you that the children were well cared for, and that I knew that as soon as I saw a psychiatrist and could get on medication versus waiting 2 weeks to see one online, that I would be able to reset and would be back to the mom I was before. And that I said to you at that moment that if you really wanted to help the children, getting sober was the best move on your part.
Ms. Parkhurst, you bring everything back to sobriety, and I'm sorry, but we need to talk about paranoia first in this setting, okay? We can talk about sobriety in other settings. So Ms. Parkhurst, you indicated that you were voluntarily admitted to Peachford Clinic. Do you have any evidence to that effect? Any evidence to that effect? All you showed me was a letter saying that you were going to be discharged that gave no information. Is there any information that you can show me as their father that shows voluntary, involuntary, your medical plan, your diagnosis, anything? Do you have any information that you can provide to me as their father to make sure that the children are safe and that their best interests are at hand, and that I know distinctly what your mental health condition is?
Yes, Cameron. Yes, Mr. Parkhurst. We entered into evidence those items that you have requested.
You did not. The only evidence is
No, you have
item
to ask her a
number.
question. The question will be, what did you enter into evidence? That answers my
What
question.
did you enter into evidence to show me your diagnosis, your ongoing care, your whether it was voluntary or involuntary? I need to see that information immediately.
We entered in the letter that Peachford wrote that was notarized, and we entered in the medical plan that I was given at discharge.
Can you share it on your screen now, please?
I don't think that's the way this works. I thought Miss.
I don't have that, but can you?
Hold
I
on a
haven't
second.
seen.
Hold on a second. Ms. Safakos, I can understand why somebody would not file medical information, Mr. and Ms. Parkhurst, but Ms. Safakos, just for purposes of this hearing, is there information that you intended to offer as an exhibit today?
Yes, Your Honor. We emailed them to Mr. Parkhurst in the court. It's Miss Parkhurst, it's her release, her discharge paperwork that has been supplied from Peachford.
Did you send that to Mr. Parkhurst?
Yes, Your Honor.
I have
When?
seen that.
A week ago. It's all of our exhibits. He received all of our exhibits a week ago in accordance with the notice of hearing.
I have seen the discharge paperwork. I have not seen anything saying whether this was voluntary or involuntary, which is of primary importance. And then secondary, I have not seen what the diagnosis was, what a treatment plan was, etc. And Ms. Savakos, to be honest, I talked to you also.
You can't, hold on, you can't testify, Mr. Parkhurst. I was just trying to intervene to see what you were provided. So you have to continue to ask questions, and then you'll be able to testify to that which you believe supports your argument, which is what you were about to do. But unless you're done questioning her, that's not the
Ms.
time.
Parkhurst, did you receive medical records, a diagnosis, and doctoral information, medical information from both the emergency room that committed you to Peachford and Peachford Clinic in any regard that you can show to the court to show this information?
Mr. Parkhurst, we submitted the documentation you're asking for. And let me say this.
You did not.
I voluntarily went to the emergency room to seek care. I was evaluated and I signed to get psychiatric care. I signed a document asking
Ms.
for
Parkhurst,
psychiatric care. When I arrived at Peachford, it was 24 hours before I was seen by a physician. And when I was seen by the physician, I started to receive psychiatric care. At that point, once I had started receiving psychiatric care, I mean, I could have left if I wanted to, and I was there for 4 days because I wanted to make sure the medication stabilized.
Can I stop you right there for a second? I want to stop you right there. Very important point. I do not believe that you were able to leave whenever you wanted to. And I want to get information
No,
on
sir,
this.
you can't. Sir, you can't testify.
Do you have information that shows you were voluntarily admitted to Peachford? And do you have information that shows you could leave whenever you wanted? I don't believe that's the case. And
you can't testify. You can only ask her that question. That's it.
In your answer, you use the word voluntary. Do you have any proof that you can provide that shows that you were voluntarily admitted to Peachford Clinic in Dunwoody, Georgia?
I have documentation that the doctor signed and that I signed stating that I could leave as of the moment that I was evaluated by him. I don't know if we entered that as part of the evidence or not. I honestly, I know I shared it with Ms. Shafakos. I'm not sure if we submitted it. I do believe what we submitted was all of the information that you need to assess that the children are safe. I shared what I thought was even more valuable, which was my discharge paperwork, which states that there's a plan in place that I'm able to, they have no concerns about my ability to care for the kids. In fact, I emphasized, are you sure I am able to care for my kids? And they indicated, we have no concerns about that. If we did, we would be required to call DFACS because we're mandated reporters, but we have no concerns.
Parkhurst, here's the problem. You had no safety plan in place that I am aware of that you did not share with me. Is that correct?
Mr. Parkhurst, could you please define like what you mean? Like when did I need?
you know what a safety plan is. You
Hold on
tell
a
me.
second. Hold on. This has already been asked, actually. If you're talking about a formal safety plan, what she's testified to is that she always has a plan in place, a contingency plan. In this instance, it was the two ladies that you all have been talking about.
Miss
And
Parker's
they agreed to and did care for the children. That's what she's testified to.
Miss
So
Parker's
let's move on. What else is
who
there?
while you were institutionalized, we can disagree on involuntary, voluntary, and I want to get that information. And I am asking for a real trial on this to actually have time to get that
No, sir,
information.
you filed an emergency petition.
If
You wanted it heard
if,
the day you filed it, you had it delayed, and you said you were not happy about that, which gave you more time to get whatever it is that you felt you needed to get and or ask for. Today is the day. This is
Miss Parker's, are you aware that I had a meeting with the school administration on Monday? Must have been I think the calendar would read the 1st of May.
Yes, Mr. Parkhurst, I am aware of that. It was
And are you aware that the school administration received the children from Miss Kinsey Lee at that morning?
Yes, I am aware of that because
Okay. And are you aware that
Objection, Your Honor, he's not allowing her to finish her question.
you
I'm
gotta
sorry,
finish her
answer.
statement.
Kinsey Lee is my primary POC for anything with the kids. So Morgan and Hannah are in LJ or near LJ for anything like short term, but Kinsey Lee is my stand-in mom and has always been that for me and throughout the years.
Okay, Miss Parkhurst, are you aware that the school did not know who Miss Kinsey Lee was, did not have them on the list to pick up the children? I had to give them approval for Miss Kinsey Lee to pick up the children that afternoon. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of the meeting that you had with the administrators. I'm also aware of the fact that I myself also contacted the school that morning from Peachford to make sure Kinsey Lee was on the list.
Ms. Parkhurst, are you aware that when I spoke to the school late that morning, when I met with them, they did not have any idea who this person was who dropped the children off or would be potentially picking up the children that
Objection, Your
afternoon?
Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Are you aware that the school did not know who Miss Kinsey Lee was in any
Objection,
regard?
calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Are you aware that I spoke to school representatives and they were not aware of who was picking up the children that afternoon?
Calls for speculation.
It does not cause for speculation. The kids had to be picked up.
Yeah, but you're asking what she knows, and so she, you know,
Well, she couldn't know
what
anything because she was institutionalized. I mean, this is
Sir,
this is
you need to ask a question, or we're gonna stop.
Miss Parkhurst, who was authorized to pick up the children that afternoon?
Mr. Parkhurst, until I called the school, the traditional people who would have been my caregivers in the LJ area, which would have been Morgan or Hannah, were on the list. Actually know that Kinsey is on as an emergency contact. I'd be very surprised if I didn't have her as an emergency contact because she serves in that role in every other capacity. But I myself from Peachford called the school to ensure that Kinsey Lee was on the list for pickup. I did that in the morning right after your meeting. So I became aware of your meeting. We were, you had told me when we spoke that you were debating driving to Atlanta to seize the children, which caused me a lot of stress while I was there. And then knowing that you had taken the time for the first time in 2 years to meet with the school after I had pretty much begged you to engage with the school and the children for all this time, it really, honestly, Mr. Parkhurst, made me feel like you were seizing an opportunity to embarrass me and to use terms like institutionalized in a very small rural town. And I felt like it was not in the children's best interest to go and
Ms.
hold that
Parkhurst,
meeting.
that's your opinion. That's not anything of fact. You're stating your opinion about things. Now, I have a question, and I want the fact. Where does Miss Kinsey Lee live? Is it in LJ or is it in Lilburn?
Miss Kinsey Lee lives in Lilburn, where I lived until we
So
moved to
how is
LJ.
she able to
Let her
be, quote,
finish.
the mother of the children in any capacity when she lives 2.5 hours away each way? So it's a 5-hour round trip. How?
Mr. Parkhurst, I think it would be best to let Kinsey Lee speak for herself.
Miss Parkhurst, I'm asking you a question. You're good on opinions, so you tell me, how can Miss Kinsey Lee adequately be the mother that you just said when she lives in Lilburn and you live in LJ? How?
Mr. Parkhurst, she's always been my stand-in long-term mom if something was going on. And I will back that answer up. When
Okay.
my son,
You
May I
don't need
please-
to back it up. That's
May I-
Hold on
the
a
facts
second.
are the facts.
This is getting out of hand. You got to answer his question, Miss Parkhurst. It's going to the point of, if she lives that far away, how is she able to stand in? Just answer it. Whatever it is, answer it.
How is she able to stand in?
Mr. Parker, she is a person who is in a position where she has a go bag packed because of the role that she plays, and she's just very flexible. She's been in the Commission Corps for 20 years, and she's very flexible, and she has a good plan for her own children, and she's stood in on multiple occasions for me.
You said a key word there. She has her own family, correct? Her husband, 2 children.
Yes,
Correct?
Mr. Parker, she does.
So how is she able to just leave life in Gwinnett County and drive all the way to Lilburn to, quote, stand in as mother all the time when you need her? How is that? It's not possible. How is that possible?
Mr. Parker's, in the time that I've lived in LJ, I've only needed her once. In the time that I was in Lilburn, she came in to help me twice. Once when I had to have surgery, and then once when she had to go to your house to take the children.
Okay, so I also, the person that came in after Kinsey, there was a week after you got taken out of institutionalization. You did not provide any information to me about this, but then you had Miss Kinsey stay there for how many days?
I think she stayed for a few days after, and yes, my best friend flew in to be with me.
That was my next question. So after that, you had another person fly in. Was this based on doctor's orders, or was this totally voluntary?
No, Mr. Parker's, this was out of
This is very important. So I need the answer that backs it up with doctor's records here.
Sure. I understand. We entered a letter into evidence that states that I was absolutely capable and ready to go back to parenting, to come here today with you, to go back to work. And my best friend coming was because, she loves me. I mean,
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. But the important part is,
the question is, Ms. Parkhurst, were you doctors ordered to get help with the children, or was that voluntary? That's what
that was totally voluntary.
Okay.
And it was, just a matter of getting extra rest.
do you have proof of that?
Yes, I do. The letter
you
that
provide
says
that to me?
She says she entered a letter as part of the exhibits.
Okay.
She was released and discharged to go to work and to parent. That's what she just said.
Can we post this exhibit, because the exhibit says
No,
literally
because
nothing.
it's your examination.
Okay, then I'd like to
Ask the
submit it
witness.
as my own evidence. Their item number, I think it was P3, Ms. Savicos? What is your item number that's this doctor's letter?
So it's R2.
Okay, so R2, I'd like to submit as my own evidence. And is there a way to share it on the screen?
We can give you screen sharing privileges.
I don't have the information in front of me. I'm assuming they do, since it's their exhibit.
Well, but you're the one that's seeking to enter it right now. So if that's what you want to do, I can give you screen sharing privileges.
All right, just hold on, let me pull it up. Might take a second.
I assume, Ms. Safakos, you have no objection to R2.
No, Your Honor.
I have it in front of me, Mr. Parker. Go ahead. What's your question about it?
My question is that document literally says nothing except the fact that she was released. It doesn't talk about medical records, voluntary, involuntary. It doesn't provide any.
No, sir. The question you asked her when you were talking about this was whether or not the best friend and others flew in to help her because it was doctor mandated. Her response to you was she was discharged with no limitations on returning to work, court, or to parent. That's what she said, and then offered this letter as support for that.
Correct, but I'm asking her as a follow-up, are there doctors' records that show what was diagnosed, what the treatment plan is, what the ongoing prognosis and therapy is, etc.? That's a very important piece of information. And if I can't get it right now, I will request another hearing and I will subpoena.
No, you need to just let her answer the question first. It's a question she needs to have the opportunity to answer. He would like to know if you have any, is the question what her diagnosis is, or does she have a document to support what it is?
Well, item number one, what is the diagnosis? What is the official diagnosis from the doctors?
I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression.
No paranoia, no bipolar, no schizophrenia, none of that question?
No, I was not diagnosed with bipolar. I was not diagnosed with schizophrenia. The diagnoses were anxiety and depression.
Do you have any medical records in your or your attorney's possession that can show that?
I believe that, yes, I believe that what we submitted, my medical safety plan, indicates that.
You haven't provided that information to me.
Ms. Safakos, was the medical safety, what do you call in the document that you think?
It's a medical safety plan. It's in R2, Your Honor. So behind the letter is the medical safety plan.
Mr. Parkhurst, go to R2. That's where they're saying whatever it is you're looking for is.
That information doesn't, that's not. Ms. Parkhurst, on my way up to Atlanta, I had a very frank and candid discussion with your attorney who's standing right here on this call. And it was told to me, because I couldn't get any information from Peachford or you in particular, that she would provide me with a written report of what was going on. She hasn't, still to this day, still has not done it. You to
can't
this day,
testify, sir.
am I going to get that information of a medical plan, diagnosis, what happened during this, period of time? It's extremely important.
Parkhurst, the question is, he wants to know where are you providing or do you have a document that says what Peachford diagnosed you with?
Your Honor, I thought that the diagnosis was written on that safety plan that we submitted.
I don't see a diagnosis written there. It looks like an intake interview or some type of interview, but that's the question. Do you have that? A, B, are you willing to provide it?
I'm sure that I can provide it. I don't know, Ms. Safakos, if we have it in evidence already.
Your Honor, it is not contained in R2. We requested a copy of her medical file and a certified copy of that. We have not received it. We made that request on May 5th, the day after her discharge. She can provide something. The individual who wrote this letter has been very helpful with getting us some information. So I'm sure we can get some type of letter or statement showing that she's been diagnosed with depression and anxiety.
Did they give you a this is just kind of off, but is there you have a discharge summary?
That's it, Judge. That's all they gave her was the letter. Well, no, we had to request the letter. because they weren't given the items that we needed were not available. So the safety plan is what they give to discharge. So this is what she had a meeting with her therapist, her attending physician, and
No, I know what that is. I think he's
Okay.
looking for something in a more traditional sense, since Peachford's a hospital, the printed thing that the doctor signs. That's what he's looking for. But okay, go ahead. They don't have it today. Go ahead, Ms. Parkhurst.
I find that hard to believe because I've asked for this for 8 weeks now. I mean,
Well,
literally.
they don't have it, so you can't testify yet.
Okay. Okay. So, Ms. Parkhurst, did you provide me with the ID code that patients typically do for whomever to contact them at the clinic at Peachford?
Mr. Parkers, I don't believe I did.
You did not, correct. Did you provide this number to anyone else?
Yes, I did. I provided it.
Did you provide it to Hannah?
I don't recall.
Did you provide it to Morgan?
I don't recall.
Did you provide it to Lauren?
I believe I did.
Did you provide it to Jeff Toddy and your mother, who I spoke to on the phone as well?
I believe I did definitely spoke to my mom.
Did you provide it to Maya?
Yes, I provided it to Maya.
Did you provide it to Kinsey?
Yes, I provided it to Kinsey.
Did you provide it to the children?
The children were with Kinsey. They didn't need to know my medical ID number.
Okay. So you provided it to effectively everybody but me.
No, I wouldn't say everyone but you, but Mr. Parkhurst, I didn't provide it to you because I needed to be able to relax and get better. And I knew that you were calling incessantly. Like, they indicated to me that you were continuously calling and told me that I did not have to provide you with my medical ID number if I didn't want to. And I knew that I had encouraged Kinsey to stay in touch with you so that you knew what was going on with the children. I mean, at that point, the focus, I believe, should have been on where the children were and were the children safe, not on what was happening in Peachford.
Are you aware that you did not have decision-making authority while being institutionalized?
No, I'm not aware of that, because
Stop,
also
No. She gets to explain her answer. Go ahead.
I also knew that you had just blown positive and that we were pending a verdict on the fact that the children had been unsafe with you. So I operationalized.
This is not a hearing about me.
But you can't cut her off. If you ask a question, she gets to answer. Go ahead, ma'am.
I operationalized the plan that I would have operationalized if I had been hit by a car or had a serious flu, which was to make sure that the children were safe and cared for and they got to school and to their activities. And that's what happened.
Ms. Parkhurst, are you aware that you did not, under any circumstances, have parental or decision-making authority while institutionalized?
No, I'm not aware of that because I believed that I was still capable of ensuring the children were in good, safe hands.
And are you aware at the time that we had joint custody of the children? Are you aware of that? The judge had not passed down this order. It had not been delivered to me. We had joint parental custody of the children. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that, Mr. Parker, which is why I insisted that everyone who was caring for
then why did you get Miss Kinsey?
Mr. Parkhurst, now the behavior is picking back up that I saw during the last several hearings. It's abusive, sir. It is.
Ms. Parkhurst, I just have a simple question.
You cannot cut me off. You can't cut the witnesses off. You have to stop, and you're running out of time. Go.
Ms. Parkhurst. So you're aware that you did not have decision-making authority. You're aware.
She has already told you that she does not agree with that. Ask a different question.
Well, you did not, and you
Objection, Your Honor, testifying.
Are you aware that you were giving authority to, you were making decisions behind the scenes in a mental institution when you did not have the authority to make those decisions? Are you aware of that?
No, Mr. Parkhurst, I believe I was acting in the best interest of the children the whole entire way. I truly believe that. And I insisted that anyone who was caring for the children be in touch with you, that the children be able to speak with you as normal. And you had supervised visits that were suspended as a result of your alcohol abuse.
Ms.
So
Parkhurst,
I'm not sure how else I should have handled it. I believe I handled it well.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Thank you. Next question.
So you are also aware that I, at times, spoke to people at Peachford. Are you aware of that?
Yes, Mr. Parkhurst, because they would come into my room and say, your ex-husband is calling us again.
And so
We just want to
Denise,
let you know.
Denise at Peachford, who told me that you were in Unit 8A, do you know the conversation that I had with this person?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Are you aware that they have told me verbatim that you were not there voluntarily?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay and calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Are you aware that Morgan, who had the children during periods of time during this episode, she has grave concerns over your mental health?
Objection, calls for speculation, hearsay.
Then I want to get a hearing to get these people in here, because there's no way
Today
that
is
I
the-
can.
Today is
Yes.
the day. That is sustained. Keep going.
I mean, I think this is obvious. Miss Parkhurst was,
Mr. Parkhurst, do you have any
Objection
more
is
questions for
justified.
Ms. Parkhurst? If not, we'll move on.
I have plenty of more questions for Miss Parkhurst, but it's not going to do any good.
Well, the ones you're asking are not doing any good either, because you're asking her stuff she's not able to answer. Because you're asking her about what other people saw, heard, or witnessed.
Okay,
I've
I
told you
will
that 10
release
times.
her from her testimony, and I will give you the rest of my testimony.
Okay. You have any other witnesses?
I wish I did. They all said no. Morgan
Okay.
said no. Hannah said no. Lauren said no. Kinsey said no.
Okay, well, go ahead, Mr. Parkhurst. It is
And
your
it's all
turn.
because they are defending
Objection, Your Honor.
respondent here.
Yep.
This information
Mm.
came passed down to me on 4/20. I believe it was either the night of 4/27 or earlier midday on Friday the 28th. Melody was in the emergency room. She did have Hannah by her side, Hannah Fleming. She was told that she was going to get an evaluation, and she got committed to Peachford involuntarily, in my opinion, which is backed up by numerous facts, including my commentary with both Hannah and with Morgan and her friend Lauren Nita or McHenry, whichever last name you want to use. Her friend Erica, who was also going to see the children for a period of time, was very concerned. All these people were concerned. Morgan has actually been in a Peachford clinic before, and she gave me a lot of her opinion that said Melody had been divulging.
Objection, hearsay.
I'm testifying.
Yeah, you are. You're saying what somebody else told you. You can't do
I'm
that.
testifying.
You can't testify to what someone else told you for the 30th time.
Okay, so